I want to talk about books today. I got two pretty good books over the last couple of weeks about jewelry making, about design. I've been making belt buckles, as you know, or designing belt buckles. I haven't made an actual silver one yet, but that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. But I've been working on designing belt buckles, and one of the books is about belt buckles. And then I've also been working on designing brooches, man brooches mostly, but anybody can wear these. But modern brooches, because I think brooches need to make a comeback. You know, when you dress up, you can just add that little sprinkle on top to just knock it out of the park. That's what brooches are about. So I got a book on brooches, so I'm going to talk about that in this episode. This is a show about jewelry, why we wear it, why it matters, how it's made, and what it means. I'm Alex D, and I turn cannabis into gold. I make mind-blowing jewelry in gold, silver, and platinum from cannabis plants here in Canada for stage, screen, for people who want to rock crazy jewelry. I'm the Cannabis Goldsmith. But first, you're wondering how my fundraising campaign is going to raise the funds to digitize the Tribe magazine photographic collection, this huge photographic collection, which is my life's early work as publisher of Tribe magazine and photographer of Tribe magazine. A massive collection of cultural importance and significance to Canada, but also to the ravers, DJs, nightclub owners, and promoters, event promoters, people who went to raves and house music parties in the 90s and 2000s. This collection is important to them. It's a critical piece of the missing piece, really, of Canada's history in photographs that I have. So I'm trying to raise money to digitize it. The eventual goal is to go, when I'm gone, it's going to be in my estate plan to be split between 3 galleries in Canada, 3 art entities that I feel will ensure the longevity of the images. So Canadians of the future, people all over the world, will be able to access the images into the future. So that's my goal, my personal goal with this, to give it away in the end, right? But in the meantime, it has to be digitized, and that's hugely expensive to do right, and I'm doing it right because this collection is important, right? Not only for the people in the photos, but for Canada, for our culture as a whole. So I'm taking it very seriously, and the amount of money I need to raise to digitize, to buy the gear to digitize is like 50 grand Canadian, which is 30 something USD. Not that much money, but for me, it's a lot. That's why I'm doing the campaign to reach out. We're at 4% and 50 days to go. So I've got almost enough raised now to buy 1 calibrated monitor. Like, that's how expensive this gear is. But you need the right gear in order to do the job right. And now, a calibrated monitor is you're familiar with a monitor, right? You're probably looking at a monitor if you're on a desktop. But a calibrated monitor is an exotic kind of monitor that shows exact color. So when you do a scan, when you scan an image, what you see on this monitor is exactly what's on the scan. It's not what the monitor is seeing is on the scan. It's exactly what's on the scan. So that when you make color corrections to the image with software on this monitor, they're accurate. You're not ruining the image by changing the color of it on some monitor that isn't even showing you what's in the scan you've just done. So that's why calibrated monitors are one of the most important pieces of this digitization job that I'm trying to do. Anyway, it's coming along. I'm working really hard. I understand some things about fundraising now that I didn't before. And if you're thinking about doing fundraising for anything, it's a lot of work. And you need to be really skilled at a lot of stuff. You need to be skilled, if you want to do it yourself, you need to be skilled at marketing, advertising, designing graphics with computers. You need to be able to interface with people asking questions about what the campaign is about. You need to be an evangelist. You need to talk to people who you need to roust up people and shake them, wake them up and say, look, here, this is going on, right? You need to know about this. Like, these are all the skills that you need to have in order to be a fundraiser. So I can see why these companies have sprung up to take advantage of the lost fundraising person. This is probably why I got all these emails from people when I just launched the campaign on Indiegogo from these companies that they waited a few days until you realize how much work it is. Then they send you the email saying, oh, we can do the job for you, whatever. And I'm sure they charge a commission or whatever. But you know what? I'm a jack of all trades, right? I'm willing to do the work. And the work is good. It's not poor. I mean, if I cut videos, I mean, they're not bad. They're not Academy Award material, but they're okay. And the main thing I'm trying to do is communicate the message, which I think I'm doing. But the other thing fundraising people don't understand is that even if you have all your ducks in a row, you have all your skills. You have your evangelism and marketing skills and your web design and graphic design and all the stuff you need to do fundraising. The problem is nobody's going to see it because Mark Zuckerberg and Sundar Pichai are sitting on the taps controlling who gets to see your message, and they want their cut. So you have to know about that even before you start. Just saying. So I'm sorry if I pissed you off and dissuaded you from fundraising, but anyway, I'm committed to my project. I've got 50 days. I'm going to work my butt off. I'm going to do everything I can to get to the goal. I'm sending another email to the Heritage Minister of Canada. I sent her a letter, and I didn't expect a response. They're not really connected to governing anymore. They're basically in survival mode. But I'm going to send her an email and remind her that this is an important project for the country, and this maybe they can do one good thing for Canadian culture before the next election. And, every communication coming out of their mouths now is about the opposition leader. I'm going to beg and plead to see if they can fund this because it's their mandate to fund jobs like this, and they should be doing it, and they must chip in something. They have to. And I'm gonna go after them again, but I'm also going after corporations too, and major record labels. I'm writing emails and letters to them, and also my friends. I'm gonna keep going after my friends until they dig in. I can't believe that only 10 people have donated out of the 17,000 ravers that went to one of these events, right? And it's not on me. It's on the communications. It's like my communications aren't getting out to the ravers and to the people who read my magazine unless I pay Facebook. So I've started to buy Facebook advertising in order to get the message out. It's just a trap, right? So know all this before you even attempt to fundraise. And or don't do it yourself. Just hire some company to do it, even from the beginning, and pay them a commission and build that into your budgets. And then you don't have to worry about any of that shit. But you see, those companies that you hire won't know who your readers or who your market is. But obviously neither do I, because I've only got 10 donors now, and they're big donors too. There's one donor for a promoter now living in the U.S. He made a nice big donation to this campaign. And, that's how it should be, I think. But whatever. I'm going to give it my best effort, and we'll deal with what comes, what may. Come what may. That's how they used to say it, right? Back in the Victorian age. Anyway, this sort of segues into books, because eventually, not only do I want to give away this collection to Canada so people can see it, but in the meantime, as this digitization is happening, I want to be able to show the images on the web, in books, and documentary films. And I've been thinking a lot about books lately, and how a book, if I was going to put out a book, of anything, say my jewelry designs. If I was going to put out a book of my jewelry designs, how would I do it? If I was going to put out a book of the Tribe magazine photos I shot in the 90s and 2000s, the ravers and the house music people, that book would just be amazing. But how would I do it? Like, what would it look like? And who would buy it, right? How could I sell it? All these things you start thinking about when you start thinking about books. I really don't understand book publishing. I used to be a magazine publisher, which is publishing, right? I understand how to publish stuff. But our books are different. Books are weird. Like I listen to a lot of podcasts and of various types every day. I have a basket of podcasts that I listen to. And all of a sudden, this fucking Jonathan Haidt guy, he's on every podcast. He's on every single podcast. Now, I don't mind him. I like him. I enjoy listening to him when I hear him on occasion. But not on everybody's show, on every different show. And like, why this is happening is he has a book coming out, or his book is just out. And now he's on every podcast talking about his book. Now, you have to wonder, how does that happen? How does Jonathan Haidt wind up on every podcast talking about his book? Publicists are paying the podcast to put him on the podcast. The publicists are contacting the podcast host and saying, look, we got Jonathan Haidt here. He's just put out a new book, a brand new book. It's going to be on the New York Times bestsellers list. You should have him on your podcast. And here's what we can do for you, right? It's all pay to play now. Everything is all pay to play. So this is how Jonathan Haidt appears on all the podcasts. Frankly, instead of Jonathan Haidt, you could have 4,000 other books are vying for that same slot on the podcast, right? So if you're thinking about book publishing, you have to think about all this. Who's going to know about your book once you publish it? I used to love in Toronto walking into all these discount bookstores that just sprung up, where publishers would just dump books that they couldn't sell. And you'd go into these places and you'd find these amazing books. I would, anyway. And, it was all weird stuff, but occasionally you would get a really amazing book for cheap. And this was like overstock from publishers. They couldn't sell this shit. This was just like, and the publication dates were recent too. It was like just published 2 years ago or whatever. And they're already in this discount bookstore, just being sold for $1.99. So you can imagine the author's cut of that, right? $0. So that's the thing to think about with books. Like, wow, But I'm not thinking about books like that. I'm thinking about books differently. I mean, books are still a good way to get material, get content into the future. And what I mean by that is that if you publish a book, in the future, someone, if it has an ISBN number or whatever, somebody is going to be able to find that book or the record that it existed. They might even be able to find a copy of it, buried under the rubble, the post-apocalyptic rubble. They'll dust off remove some broken rocks and dust off some stone and lift out this book of jewelry, of cannabis jewelry by Alex D. and in 2025, and go, whoa, man. The hard copy in the future, or microfilm or whatever they do, when they get books and they put it into libraries. So this is a way to get your images, your text to time travel it into the future. And as I get towards the end of my life, and you'll start thinking like this too as you get older. Trust me. See, my dad told me that, and I didn't believe him. And I'm telling this to you, and you're not believing me. But there's a certain threshold you reach in age that then you start thinking about, fuck, I've got to start protecting this shit, the important shit in my life, and that has meaning, and discard the rest, and then protect the stuff that has meaning. So maybe somebody can learn from it in the future. And you start thinking about stuff like that. You start preparing estates, and you start doing stuff like that. I mean, as you get older. So I guess maybe that's part of it, is to try and preserve the work of a life and then carry it forward into the future. I don't have children, right? So normally people, the thinking is that if you have children, there you go. They're going to carry your whatever into the future. But what I've seen, that doesn't happen in most cases. Something else happens entirely. But anyway, I mean, but it's not all about me, right? It's about this content, this valuable content. These are photographs of people, or these are jewelry pieces that have taken hundreds of hours to make and design, right? These are things that people in the future will find interesting. Just as I look back at the Art Deco period for my own design inspiration. I love looking at that period. That's 100 years ago. Now, I don't copy the designs, but it just triggers like energy in me that I want to go into the shop and fucking make shit, because look how beautiful that is, right? Like, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. And so in the future, someone might see a photograph that I shot and start an underground scene, right? That's the kind of thinking I'm thinking about. But anyway, books. Books have value for this, and people don't think about that part. It might wind up in the discount bin for $1.99, but it's still in records and databases around the world, and hopefully digitized, and somebody can read it in the future. Books. And the two books I want to talk about and the impact they had on me, I've been working on buckles, and I got this hardcover book on Amazon, and it was expensive. It's called The Western Buckle, and The Western Buckle, History, Art, Culture, Function, photography by David R. Stoecklein. I hope I've pronounced Mr. Stoecklein's name correctly. Nobody pronounces my name correctly, so I hope I got yours right. This is like a book that focuses on cowboy Western buckles. They're really good photographs of the fronts of buckles here, but I bought this to see the backs of buckles, because I've never made a belt buckle before, and I wanted to consult the master. So I thought, okay, I'm making a super large belt buckle, like cowboys wear super large belt buckles. Let me see if there's somebody else got a book about that. So that's how I wound up with this Western buckle book. Now, the photos in it are amazing, and the whole culture and stuff around these buckles, these trophy buckles and stuff. This book is really good for that. But it didn't answer my question about the backs. I want to see the backs of some of these masterpiece buckles, because my buckle is a masterpiece, and I want to make sure that the back is as good as the front in my jewelry pieces. Always do that. And this is jewelry, but it's a belt buckle. It's sterling silver. It's huge. It's made out of a cannabis indica leaf, live cast, and then fashioned into a massive belt buckle. It's a whole leaf, and you can see a picture of it on our Instagram page, the prototype. It's not cast yet. It's at TRIBEDOTCA. That's at TRIBEDOTCA. So this is the what I needed help with, the mechanism on the back that holds it onto the belt. And I thought maybe some cowboy belt buckle maker, and some master silversmith in Arizona or something might have figured it out. And people have figured it out. It's just that I'm still trying to figure it out. So anyway, I got this book. It's a great book, but it didn't answer my question. So if you're interested in Western culture, Western U.S. Cowboy jewelry, get the Western Buckle, because it's good for that. Now, the other book that came this week is I've been waiting for. I had a hard time finding it for a good price, because I guess there's a limited amount of books of it available. She probably only printed a few. And so the price is it's like the stock market sometimes trying to buy a used book. But anyway, it's called Behind the Brooch by Lorena Angulo, or Angulo, Angulo. Behind the Brooch by Lorena Angulo. A closer look at backs, catches, and pin stems. Now this book, oh man, this is a fabulous book. This book hit me just where I needed it. I'm working on man brooches, right? I need to find out how the mechanisms of brooches work on the back. Like, I know how they work. Generally speaking, there's a pin, right, that you goes through. I explained in a previous episode of how these pin backs sort of work. But I want to see photos of them on different jewelry pieces. And this book is this. But it's way more. It's way more. I got so much out of this book. It's like, what she's done is she's collected a whole bunch of brooches from different designers all around the world, right? And she's photographed the backs of them, how the jewelers have designed the backs of these brooches to connect the brooch onto the person's jacket or dress, or how it pins on. She's photographed the back. So the bigger picture is the back, and then the smaller picture is the front. Like, it's perfect. It's just perfect. So yeah, the fronts I'll talk about the fronts in a minute, but the backs they're all quite similar. The first thing I learned is all brooch pin backs are similar. Now the ones that are different, the jeweler adds a little like frill or some kind of modification to it that just takes it up a notch. And that's what I want to do. So I was looking for that to see how other jewelers did that. And the secret to doing it right is any kind of design work you do on the back has to match what the design is on the front, or it has to be congruent with what's on the front of the brooch, of the man brooch or the woman brooch or pin or whatever you want to call it. It has to be consistent. So, like if you have leaves on the front, I'm thinking you got to have leaves or something plant on the back to sort of to carry the theme onto the back of the jewelry piece, right? And you see a lot of it in the brooch designs here, and they're trying. But a lot of them are just doing simple wire pin backs that are quite common. But I don't want to do a common thing, right? So I started getting some ideas when I was looking at the photos in this book. But more than that, I started seeing there's so many different brooches in this book, and they're made of so many different materials. There's like paper, there's like clear silicone rubbery shit, there's gold, there's platinum, there's silver, brass, like all kinds of materials. And some of the designs are just, they're intense. Like, I'm thinking, this is a little piece of art that someone wears on their lapel that someone would look at for 5 minutes or whatever on the lapel. But the amount of work that went into some of these pieces, you should see them. They're just stunning, right? I'm thinking this is something a jeweler, artist, or a designer could focus on and make brooches. Not even in precious metal. They could make them in resin or some other material that's less expensive. But I think there's a niche, an opening there for somebody who wants to make modern brooches out of non-traditional jewelry materials. I think there's an opening there for somebody. Not me. I'm too busy. But there's a niche. So anyway, this book, I started going through this. I'm going to go through it a lot, I think. There's designs here that are just like crazy. A lot of them are like absolutely not functional. Like the pin is functional. It'll hold it on the lapel. This is, of course, what the book's about. But the front, like, holy fuck. Like there are little dangly bits. There's like plastic doll shoes, like just the weirdest shit on these brooches. Like, I'm thinking, fuck, man. Imagine mixing, precious materials with non-precious materials. Like there's some opportunity for design ideas for me in this book that I can mix and match different materials to combine them into. Like I'm working in silver and gold mostly. I'm not using anything else. Like I used horn with the unicorn horn piece, but But here there's like other stuff. It's so good. So I highly recommend Lorena Angulo's book, Behind the Brooch. If you can find it, you're a jeweler, buy it, put it on your shelf. And then take it out and look at the designs. They will blow your mind. Jewelers in this book, man, your work is great. That's all I got to say. Anyway, so that's it for me. The fundraising shit is, I've got 50 days of it. You're going to hear, I've got 50 days left to raise this money to digitize this huge photographic collection that's so important to our culture in Canada and so important to Canadian electronic music and Canadian house music culture, techno music culture, jungle music culture, DJ culture. This collection needs to be digitized, and I am going to go work my butt off for the next 50 days to try and do that, to try and raise the money to do that. So you'll be hearing about it again and again from me, just saying. Anyway, that's it. And I am going to finish off. I'm working on today. I'm working on a few things today. I'm going to cast 3 buckles and a big indica leaf, a half indica leaf. I'm going to put, I'm working on one today, which is a field of cannabis seeds, okay, in silver, sterling silver, with 1 seed in 14 karat gold for a belt buckle. I think this is just going to be an amazing buckle. Because seeds, if you kind of pour a bunch of seeds in a dish, for example, they have a texture, right? They have round shapes and textures. And when the light strikes that from the side, you can really see it. It's like craters on the moon, but opposite kind of, right? So you got this kind of beautiful texture, this nice rounded, forms close together. It's visually pleasing. And I think I'm going to slap in a nice 14 karat gold seed in there and solder it into the buckle from the back. So I think this is going to be an amazing piece. So now I just have to figure out the closing mechanism on the back and how that will work. I think I will try a different one. I'm trying 2 different strategies for mechanisms on the back of these buckles. There's 2 real ways to do it, and I'm going to try both, and we'll see which works the very best. I'm sure they'll all work, but one might be a little better, so we'll see. So that's the goal of these next pieces. There should be like 3 pieces coming in the next month. Oh, well, I'm trying to raise the money to digitize this huge collection. Anyway, I'm going to go embarrass the heritage minister. No, I'm going to go try and go to the heritage minister into considering Canadian culture instead of her own party's survival for maybe just this thing, this project. Then she can go back to it. She can go back to attacking the opposition or whatever she's doing. But we really need to get some money from the Heritage Ministry to help digitize this project. Frankly, if the community is chipping in, they should be chipping in as well. Wake up, Heritage Ministry. Anyway, that's it for me. Alex D., the Cannabis Goldsmith. We talked about a lot today, didn't we? We talked about books, how books are sold, how books... the other thing before I go, about book publishing, there's been so much consolidation in the book publishing industry that there's only a handful, even less, publishers that exist in the world, and they're immensely powerful. And so these are the companies that are getting Jonathan Haidt into podcasts. They're shoehorning him in there, and I am quite certain that's happening. Otherwise, there would be other people on the shows. That's it for me, the Cannabis Goldsmith. Spring is here. And I'm going to have a hearty breakfast, get to belt buckle making, and fundraising. I'll see you next week. The Cannabis Goldsmith is produced by Tribe Communications, Inc. in the Thousand Islands area of Ontario, Canada. You can see what we do at tribe.ca. Send us an email, alexd@cannabisgoldsmith.com. Thanks for listening, And we'll see you next week on the Cannabis Goldsmith.